Today's an exciting day. We finally have the Helix 3.0 update. I've been spending a lot of time with it this morning and yesterday just preparing for this video so I can quickly, hopefully give you a summation of all the new features. A quick rundown, something easy to digest. There's a lot of stuff. So let's just get into it. So first thing about the update, if you're using Helix 2.9 or later, this is going to be very simple. You just go into your HX Edit program and go to the bottom right. There should be a little button that says check for updates, and it'll actually prompt you to back up your files, back up your Helix program. If it doesn't prompt you to do that for some reason, you can also use File Create Backup. Be sure to name it something that's relevant for all that hard time you've spent creating your presets. You definitely don't want to lose that. And then it's pretty easy from there. If you're using 2.8 or earlier, one of those versions, then you're going to need to go to the Line 6 website and download the HX Edit program manually. There'll be a link in the description. In that link, there's also a complete rundown if you're into reading a big list about all the updates. One issue I ran into as I updated, and I was reading about this a little bit from other people, is that in HX Edit, some of the new features, amp models, effects, and stuff didn't show up. I noticed they were on the Stomp, but not on HX Edit. If you run into that problem, uninstall HX Edit and reinstall it. Sometimes when Line 6 puts out a new patch, there's still some bugs, and by the time they create 3.01 or 3.1 or something, that'll all be finished. I realize it's been a minute since my last Helix video, and that's because we've been waiting for 3.0. I did not want to create a video that just became instantly irrelevant whenever 3.0 came out. So although there haven't been many recent Helix videos from me, there's going to be a lot this week, a lot in the coming months, so please stay tuned for that. First off, for all Helix units except HX Effects, we've got 3 new amp models and 2 new cabs. We've got an amp head based on the Princeton, which is one of my favorite amps of all time. Love that amp. And then we've got 2 cabinets to go along with it. One 1x10 and one 1x12 with an Alnico blue speaker. I've always felt like the Helix had a lot of 1x12 and 4x12 options, and now we've got another 1x10 option. I love 1x10 amps. I've got the Mesa Boogie, I've got my Super, you've seen before. I'm a huge fan of 1x10 speakers. So the new Fender Princeton model is called the US Princess. And then the next amp model we have is called the DAS Benzin Mega and the DAS Benzin Lead. It's based on the Diezel VH4, which is a higher gain amplifier. First one's based on the Mega channel on that, and then the second one is based on the Lead channel. Similar to how we have a couple amps in the Helix that have different channel options. Moving into the new distortion effects now, there's a bunch of them. Line 6 must have been in collaboration with Horizon Devices. There's a couple new ones in here that are made to emulate, or you should say maybe are inspired by, the Horizon devices. The first one is the really popular Horizon Drive. This is going to be cool for me to try out. I don't really have any high gain analog pedal options. I'm not really that kind of player, but I do like experimenting with that kind of stuff. In that pedal, there's a really unique feature where you can set a gate, a noise gate in it, which can really tighten up some riffs if you're using a ton of distortion. And then also, I should mention after that, is that they've taken that gate from that pedal and they've put it in as a dynamics option. So with all the other noise gates and the compressors and stuff, you can now find the gate out of the Horizon Drive in there. The next addition to the distortion lineup we have is an emulation on the Boss HM2, which is the heavy metal that really sought after, it's gotten popular in the last couple years, and Line 6 calls this model the Swedish chainsaw. After that, we have 3 new fuzz pedals. The first one, and the one that I'm most excited about, is called the Bighorn Fuzz, modeled after the Ram's Head Electro-Harmonix Big Muff Pi of 1973. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Bighorn Fuzz is supposed to be based off the same fuzz that this op-amp chip Electro-Harmonix Fuzz is based off of. This is one of my favorite pedals. It's only like $80, but I can't really use it with my Helix. I just feel like sometimes analog fuzzes or distortions don't play nice. So I'm excited to have that option in the Helix. Let's take a second and thank Line 6. They've already gotten our money for the Helix units, but they keep putting out updates and they keep making it better and better. What a cool thing to do, right? Now the next 2 fuzzes I'm not familiar with myself, whatever they're trying to emulate, but I'm going to do a lot of research. There's going to be plenty of videos on this channel to come with walkthroughs and tone building exercises and how to get the best sound out of your Helix. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. But the 2 fuzzes following the Big Muff, the first one is the Pocket Fuzz, inspired by the Jordan Boss Tone Fuzz, and then the other one is called the Ballistic Fuzz in the Helix. It's based on the Euthymia ICBM fuzz. That sounds like ICBM, maybe that's like a chip or something. Now, real quickly, let's talk about the HX Stomp. We've got 8 blocks in it now. This is one of the biggest updates, for me anyway, for all HX Stomp users. I've always found that 6 blocks was pretty limiting, especially because I'm never really using the full capabilities of the DSP. I pretty much always have a volume pedal and an effects loop block, which hardly suck up any DSP. So the fact that they added in 2 more blocks so that essentially I'm not wasting 2 blocks on those anymore and I can use this thing to its full potential, that has been a major update for me. Now we should note, Line 6 wrote this in the official update announcement and it's in the manual now too, and I'll read it verbatim. It says important, all caps. Although HX Stomp now has 2 additional block locations, this does not mean it has magically more DSP horsepower to accommodate those blocks. Don't be surprised if you're not able to fill all 8 blocks with exactly what you want because of DSP, and they mentioned the new Polyphonic pitch shifter. We'll get to that in a second. By the way, the timestamps for all of this are in the description if you want to skip around. We've taken note of those who've bemoaned the HX Stomp's 6 block limit, and if the same person now complains about running out of DSP with 8 blocks, we're sending hooligans to their home to administer an atomic wedgie. So yeah, that was cool of them to update that. That was a request by a lot of people, but obviously they can't update the amount of DSP power that this has. So to keep going with the new effects, another big one we have, it's in the EQ section. This is going to be an acoustic simulator based on the Boss AC2. What that pedal kind of does is it'll take your sound and apply a preset EQ curve to it. You'll be able to tweak the top end, the bottom end. I owned that pedal for a while, but eventually I ended up relying on the HX Stomp and impulse responses to get a fake acoustic tone out of an electric guitar. That's what this patch is for. It's designed to take your electric guitar, and when you need a quick and simple acoustic sound, you don't feel like taking a second guitar to the gig, we now have a patch that's specifically designed to do that. If you're in the know, you actually can use IRs for this. You can get an impulse response of an acoustic instrument body and use that instead. I have some videos on that. But something that I'm excited for personally is being able to use the AC2 simulator in combination with an IR, maybe where I'm still blending in some of the dry signal. So if you are one of my complete preset library supporters, I thank you, number one. I've got about 300 now, and it's been incredible. This preset library is a collection of about 50 presets that I'm always adding to. It's a Google Drive folder, essentially. There's a link in the description if you're not into that yet. But to celebrate the release of Helix 3.0 coming out, I'm going to do a lot of new presets. I'm going to add probably 10 or 12 to it, using some of the new effects, amp models, and definitely one for acoustic guitars. I've created an impulse response of my Martin HD28, and that'll be thrown in there as well. So give me about 10 days or so from the release of this video as I get everything up to the same level of quality that all the other presets are at. I was making them while I was on my last cruise ship gig with the main system in the theater, so that was a really great system to work with. I usually design them on my studio monitors now, and then I'll check them on a couple different sound systems in the area that I have access to. So anyway, give me about 10 days and there'll be a huge update for that. On to the next effect. This has been a huge update for a lot of people. A lot of people are asking for this, and Line 6 did it. This is a polyphonic pitch shifting block. And they've created a couple different versions. They've made one to essentially emulate the Electro-Harmonix pitchfork and how we use that pedal, the controls on it. They've made one to emulate the Digitech whammy and one to emulate the Digitech drop. Sometimes it's funny, I'll see like a huge Helix board and then there'll just be one extra pedal, the Digitech drop, and I think a lot of people are going to find that they can get rid of that now. The polyphonic pitch shifting pedals work really well, but they do suck up a ton of DSP. So I'll give you a quick rundown of the different options we have for pitch shifting now. If you go into the pitch/synth drop-down folder, you're going to find one that says poly pitch, and this one has controls to affect the amount of time it takes for the pitch to get from the bottom to the end point, the top. And this is something we can do with the Electro-Harmonix pitchfork. As you press down on a button, you can set it to be momentary or latching. As you press down on the button and hold it down, it'll raise up to that pitch, release it, it'll come back down at a certain rate. You can change the rate. It's called the shift time parameter. The next version you'll see is called Poly Wham, obviously meant to emulate the Digitech whammy, and you can use an expression pedal with that one to shift up and down. Next one is Poly Capo. If you can imagine putting a capo on your guitar and pitch shifting everything up, if you need to play in a different key for a song or you need a drop tuning but you only brought one instrument with you, this is essentially made to emulate the Digitech drop, and it also works really well. Now the last one out of the new polyphonic pitch shifting effects is called 12-string, and I think we have an idea of what that might emulate. In all of these polyphonic effects, you're going to see one control that's called auto EQ, and I think this is going to be really useful because as you shift a guitar or a bass or whatever, any instrument up and down, it changes the upper harmonics, the overtone series, and we get kind of, you know, it can sound digital. The pitchfork has a huge problem with this. It sounds a little unnatural. What this EQ control is supposed to be able to do is kind of tame that and help it sound more natural. So if you pitch shift down a half step or up a half step, you're probably not going to notice it. If you're going a whole octave or maybe the interval of a fifth or more, you're definitely going to notice a change in tone, and that's essentially what this auto EQ function is made to do. It's supposed to correct that, make your guitar sound a little bit more natural, even though it's been pitch shifted. Another really cool effect that's been added is poly sustain. It's under the delay blocks, and this has been something that a lot of people have been finding workarounds for in the past. It's made to emulate the Electro Harmonix freeze, which is something I've always kept on my board. It's a really great pedal to use, really easy for creating soundscapes or just seeming like you have an extra instrumentalist in the band. It's a sustain pedal for guitar, essentially. Now what this polyphonic freeze does is you'll press down a button and you can set it to be latching where you press it and it holds on to it, or momentary where it only lasts as long as you press that switch. You'll play a chord, hit the button, and then that chord is going to sustain underneath whatever else you're going to play. And like I said, it can be really useful with latching or momentary foot switch options. As I said before, this is something that people have been emulating in the HX Stomp and the Helix units before. You can use the glitz verb and some of the other stuff in the Helix. You can use the delay blocks, the slow gear to do it. I actually spent a lot of time creating what I thought was like the best one. I was about to release it in the preset library, and then this came out. I think I'll still release it because it seems to be a little bit different what I've created than the actual sustain one. What I've tried to do with the dynamic freeze patch is hit that foot switch, and as long as you hold that, that's going to dictate how loud the freeze function is. So if you press it quick and release it, it's going to stay pretty silent, and then if you press and hold on to it for a while and then release it, it's going to be much louder in the mix. And that's a really cool thing to do. Then you have an adjustment for how loud you want that underlying sustained tone to be in reference to the rest of the guitar playing in the band mix. I had also added some modulation and reverb in there so that you can get a couple different pad type sounds if that's what you're going for. Something that is really cool that Line 6 has added in this new sustain block is that you can actually pitch shift it. There's a parameter in there and you can basically set it to harmonize from a fifth, a fourth, an octave or whatever to create some really dense pads. So I think I'm going to release the dynamic freeze, and then I'm also going to play around with this new freeze block and release something else based on that. That's just kind of my style. I love that kind of effect and creating soundscapes with the guitar. Be sure to check out the upcoming video series I'm doing where I'm building a professional pedal board from start to finish. It's very much centered around the HX Stomp, and I'm combining it with a ton of external pedals to really fill out the capabilities of the thing. It's going to be a fun series, and I've been working on it a lot. Hope you're going to dig it. I'm going to finish up with the effects section here, and we'll get into the major updates in a second. The next one to talk about is the glitch delay, and this is kind of what it sounds like. It's a delay with a lot of options to manipulate on the fly. Some really cool things Line 6 has added in there, and I don't even want to get into it. It's going to take too much time for this video. We'll talk about that in a future one. Line 6 has also added a poly detune, and that's found in the modulation section. So that sounds like you're going to be able to change the amount of sense that your guitar is being modulated from. It's essentially like a chorus pedal but without the time factor. So you can take the pitch of your guitar, pitch shift it up a couple cents or down to give it kind of a wider sound or to intentionally make it sound a little out of tune and wonky. Line 6 has also added a new looper. This one's huge. It seems like it's kind of inspired by the Chase Bliss Mood or Blooper pedals. So essentially it is a looper that we can manipulate in a lot of different ways. We can take a small piece, sample it, play it back in reverse, which is something we could do with the old looper actually, but this one looks to be a lot easier and a lot more functionable on the smaller devices. So another huge video I think is to come for the shuffling looper. Now, on to the main features that have been added. Line 6 has been bragging about a dark horse feature that they're adding. A lot of people have been asking for this. It is preset spillover. So what does this mean? If you're someone that likes to operate in preset mode instead of snapshot or foot switch, where you've got a preset sound and when you need to go to your next sound, there's a lot of block changes and stuff, you've decided to make a new preset for it. As you're playing and you switch presets, in the past there was a complete dropout in sound, and then it comes back on sometimes with an audible pop if you're playing. This is due to the auto impedance, which Still hasn't been fixed. I think they're working on that. That's something that they've announced is coming in the future. So the pop isn't fixed. However, they do have spillover. So from that first preset, you're playing, and you change presets, it's going to basically crossfade between the two. This is only available on the larger Helix right now because it takes up a lot of DSP. I doubt we're going to see it in the HX Stomp or HX Effects, but you can do it in the floor, the LFT, and the rack units. But the downside is what you need to sacrifice is the second path. So in those larger devices, we can have parallel paths. What they're going to do is sacrifice the second one so that essentially your first preset is taking up that first path, and then the second path is going to be your new preset, and they're just cross-faded as you switch between them. Gets rid of the drop in volume, and they said they're working on that pop, which is due to the impedance settings. That'll come in a future update, I'm sure. Another really cool feature that Line 6 has added is favorites. Of course, we have normal presets, and in the past, if you had set a certain effects block in a very special way that you wanted to copy and paste between a couple different presets, that's how you'd have to do it. You'd have to copy and paste, but now Line 6 has added, and this is available on all units, from the expensive to the HX Stomp. Line 6 has added the ability to have 128 favorite slots. So say you dial in one of the new Polyphonic pitch settings that you want to copy and paste to all your previous presets. That's easy to do. You can save it as a favorite, and then as you go into these new presets, just recall that favorite and add it in. Something small Line 6 has added, and it's existed in HX Effects for a little bit, but now we have it on all of the devices, is the indicator for minimum and maximum value. You can actually see this show up on the screen now per each parameter. HX Stomp was also given the ability to be used as command center. Line 6 had been announcing that in the past. We had command center added in 2.9, I believe, which is essentially a way that you can use your Helix device as a MIDI controller to do a lot of different stuff. There's some cool videos out there already on that. I'm not huge into that. I have a dedicated MIDI controller to control the HX Stomp, so I recommend a different channel if you're looking into using the HX Stomp as a command center controller. And then lastly, Helix Native, which is the DAW plugin version of Helix, has now had a tuner added. If you have a Helix unit and you're interested in getting that, there's actually a huge discount. Helix Native is only $99 for anyone that has bought a Helix unit and the serial number has not been registered yet with Line 6. So if you've bought your device used already and the previous owner had already claimed that, it's not going to be available. But if you bought it used, that's 100% an option for you if you're looking to get a plugin for your DAW. Helix Native's really useful. I've been using it a lot, actually. So there it is. What I thought would be a quick rundown was probably not such a quick video in retrospect. I hope this video was helpful to you. Share it with a friend, hit the like button, the subscription button. There's going to be a lot of Helix tutorials for these new effects and features in the future on this channel. Stay tuned for some of that, and I'll see you in the next video.